Two friends, Jack and Sam, packed their bags for an unforgettable journey into the wilderness. These weren't your ordinary friends, these were comrades bound by a shared passion for the great outdoors and the allure of the unknown. Jack, the more seasoned of the two, was a rugged adventurer with a keen eye for detail and a knack for survival. Sam, on the other hand, was a city boy who yearned for an escape from the concrete jungle, a thirst for adventure that was quenched in the company of Jack. Their friendship was an interesting blend of contrasting personalities, a mix that somehow brewed up the most exciting of adventures. Their trips were not just mere vacations, but journeys into the heart of the unexplored, the uncharted, and the undeniably thrilling. This time, their compass pointed towards the mountains, a terrain that promised an adrenaline rush like no other. Their preparations for the journey were meticulous, yet tinged with an air of spontaneity. Jack's bag was filled with survival gear, a testament to his experience in the wild. Sam's bag, on the other hand, was a mishmash of necessities and novelties, a reflection of his optimistic and curious nature. The anticipation of the trip was palpable. The thought of the upcoming adventure had their hearts racing with a blend of exhilaration and nervousness. The mountains were calling, and they were ready to answer. Their minds were filled with visions of towering peaks, lush green forests, and the thrill of the unknown. They were drawn to the wilderness not just for the adventure it promised, but also for the mystery it held. The day finally arrived. The sun was just peeking over the horizon as they loaded their bags into the car. Their hearts pounded with anticipation, their spirits high with the promise of adventure. They exchanged a look of excitement, a silent agreement that this was going to be a journey to remember. With their hearts filled with excitement and a hint of fear, they embarked on their journey, completely unaware of what awaited them. After a long drive, Jack and Sam reached their destination as the sun began to set. The world around them was painted in hues of orange and pink, a picturesque scene marred only by the lingering sense of unease. The mountain cabin, their home for the next few days, stood alone amidst the vast wilderness, a solitary figure against the encroaching night. The cabin, old and weather-beaten, seemed to hold its own secrets, its wooden frame creaking in the crisp evening air. It was as if the cabin itself was whispering tales of the past, tales that were best left unheard. The eerie silence of the wilderness was a stark contrast to the usual hustle and bustle they were accustomed to. It was a silence so profound that it seemed to swallow all other sounds, leaving only the rhythmic beating of their hearts as a harsh reminder of their solitude. As they unloaded their gear, the isolation of their location became more pronounced. There were no other cabins in sight, no signs of civilization, only the unending expanse of the forest shrouded in the growing darkness. The trees swayed gently in the wind, their shadows dancing on the ground, creating an intricate pattern of light and dark that seemed to play tricks on their eyes. Their initial impressions of the cabin and its surroundings were a mix of awe and apprehension. The beauty of the wilderness, its raw and untamed nature, was awe-inspiring. But the isolation, the strange noises in the night, and the chilling tales they'd heard of the area gave birth to a growing sense of unease. As the last rays of the setting sun disappeared and the twilight gave way to a moonless night, they couldn't shake off the feeling of being watched. It was as if the forest itself had eyes that followed their every move. Their laughter and conversations faded into whispers, the unsettling feeling slowly creeping into their bones. As darkness fell, the forest came alive with sounds that sent a shiver down their spine. The once silent wilderness was now filled with strange rustling, distant hoots, and unidentifiable noises, each one adding another layer to the symphony of the night, a symphony that held a promise of the unknown. The first night in the cabin was anything but peaceful. The friends had imagined a serene, tranquil escape from the city's hustle and bustle, but what they encountered was a symphony of strange, unidentifiable sounds. The eerie whispers of the wind, the rustling of leaves, the creaking of the old wooden cabin. These were the sounds of the wilderness they had anticipated. But there were others, odd, unnatural sounds that seemed to come from all around them, breaking the silence of the night in the most unsettling way. As they sat by the fireplace trying to calm their nerves with the comforting crackle of burning logs, they couldn't shake off the distinct feeling of being watched. It was as if the darkness outside the cabin had eyes, observing their every move. This sensation was not just a fleeting thought, It was a persistent, gnawing feeling that made the hairs on the back of their necks stand up. They tried to rationalize their fears, attributing the strange noises to common sounds of the wilderness. Maybe it was just a nocturnal creature, they thought, or the wind playing tricks with the branches. But deep down they knew these explanations were feeble attempts to brush off what they were truly feeling. A creeping dread that something was amiss. The fear started to set in, creeping in like a stealthy predator. The cabin, which had seemed so inviting during the day, now felt like a trap. Every shadow seemed sinister, every sound a threat. Despite their growing fear, they tried to keep each other's spirits up, joking about the situation. But their laughter was hollow, their smiles forced. They tried to sleep, but the strange sounds outside kept them awake, their minds racing with possibilities. The first night, which was supposed to be an introduction to their adventure, had turned into an unending night of fear and uncertainty. They lay in their beds, wide-eyed and alert, listening to the symphony of the unknown, waiting for the dawn to break, to end their first terrifying night in the cabin. The next morning, their fears were confirmed. The day greeted them with an unsettling sight. Surrounding their cabin were large, unidentifiable footprints, a stark contrast to the pristine snow they had seen the day before. The footprints were massive, larger than any they had ever seen. The depressions in the snow were so deep, they suggested the creature that made them was of considerable weight. The friends looked at each other, a silent understanding passing between them. They were not alone in this isolated wilderness. Their minds began to race, trying to rationalize what could have made such monstrous footprints. A bear, perhaps? But no, the shape was all wrong, and bears were in hibernation this time of year. A joke from a local? Unlikely, considering how remote their location was. Their shared silence was broken by a hesitant suggestion. Could it be Bigfoot? The words hung in the cold morning air, a chilling possibility that neither of them wanted to consider. But the footprints matched the descriptions they had heard in old folk tales and campfire stories. The thought was unnerving, but it was becoming harder to dismiss. Despite their growing fear, they found themselves rooted in a stubborn determination. They had planned this trip for months and were not going to let some mysterious footprints ruin their adventure. They decided to stay, hoping that whatever had left the footprints had moved on and wouldn't return. But as they steeled themselves for the day ahead, they couldn't shake off the eerie feeling of being watched. Every rustle in the trees, every shadow that seemed to move just at the edge of their vision, and every unfamiliar noise in the dead of night heightened their senses. Determined to not let their fears get the best of them, they decided to stay, unaware of the horror that awaited them. Little did they know their decision would lead them down a path from which there would be no return. A sinister discovery had just marked the beginning of their nightmare. As night fell again, the unseen presence made itself known. The two friends found themselves immersed in an atmosphere of chilling uncertainty. The night was darker than ever, the moon hiding behind thick clouds. The wind whispered eerie tales and the trees swayed in harmony, creating an orchestra of unease. The tranquility of the mountains they had sought was replaced by an uncanny dread, and the unseen presence was palpable. In the heart of the night, the inexplicable began to occur. Objects within their cabin moved with a will of their own. A cup slid across the table, a chair rocked without a breeze, and the candle flickered despite the absence of wind. Each occurrence, insignificant on its own, built upon the last, escalating the friends' fear to a crescendo. Shadows danced outside their windows, formless and elusive, yet with a persistent presence that was impossible to ignore. The friends watched, their breaths held, as the shadows seemed to take on a life of their own, moving, shifting, growing. The line between reality and illusion blurred, and the friends were left grappling with their sanity. Then came the roar. It echoed from the forest, a sound so terrifying and primal that it chilled their blood. It was a roar that spoke of ancient legends and whispered tales, a roar that resonated with the very essence of fear. The friends could only listen, their hearts pounding in their chests as the roar echoed and re-echoed in the silent night. Confusion and fear became their constant companions. They clung to each other, their wide eyes reflecting the terror that gripped their hearts. The unseen presence was no longer just a feeling. It was real, and it was there, outside their cabin. Frozen with fear, They watched as the door to their cabin creaked open, and a large shadow loomed in the doorway.